So blended families are in a unique position, and they're even in a more unique position when they have both children, both spouses have children. Um, and so in this video today, I'm going to talk to you about different techniques blended families can use when considering their estate plan. Hi, I'm Claire at the Yanowitz law firm. We've been helping blended families get their affairs in order now for 29 years. This video is the first part in a multiple part series that I'm going to make on estate planning techniques for blended families. So when both parties have children from prior relationships, estate planning can be especially creative. It can be especially difficult. It can be especially complex and hard to decide. So I want to talk to you about different considerations that people in blended families think about when thinking about how to provide for their children. So the most basic, I think, is that people treat all of their children as though it's not a blended family. So maybe husband has 2 kids from a prior relationship, wife has 4, so 6 kids in total, but everybody gets 1/6 at death, okay? So even though she has more children, he has less, they're treating it like they're not a blended family. So that's one scenario on how it's handled. A second scenario that I see how it's handled is maybe they just divide their assets in half, and half of the assets will go to the 2 kids from the husband, and half of the assets will go to the 4 kids of the wife. And if for some reason one of their children predeceases them, so maybe the husband had 2 children, but at the time of death they only had 1, then that deceased child's share just goes to their living siblings. So in that case, 50% of the estate would go to husband's 1 living child, and then 50% of the estate would go to the wife's 4 living children. So that's one way to handle it. Another way I see handled with blended families is people will look at, they'll kind of keep their assets separate, and so they won't really commingle things. And what we try and do there is we try and have husband's assets passed to his kids at death. So maybe he has 40% of the estate, wife has 60% of the estate. And so that 40% is going to go to his 2 kids. The 60% is going to go to her 4 kids. Other people, when figuring out the percentages, will say, okay, we have our pots of money premarital, okay? And those go to our kids. And then we have our pots of money that we earn together in marriage, and that gets split 50-50, okay? And so we look at these different pots to figure out what assets are going to be sent over to his kids, what assets are going to be sent over to her kids. A common technique with children, when we have spouses who are disparate ages, maybe the wife is much younger than the husband. Sometimes what we will do, let's say the husband dies first. In that circumstance, in a lot of non-blended family situations, they're going to pass everything to the wife and not to the kids at that time. But sometimes it can make sense in blended family situations, especially if the wife is of a similar age of husband's children, to make a gift to his kids at the time of his death, even if his wife survives him. So it would go something like this. At my death, I'm going to give $200,000 to each of my 2 kids, and then everything else to my wife. So that is beneficial in, I think, 2 ways. First is the children, don't have to wait a really long time to inherit if they're of a similar age. as the wife. You know, the wife may outlive them. They may die in short order with the wife if they're of a similar generation as the wife. So it can help to give them an inheritance at that time. And then it can also just keep the peace in the family, in that that everybody gets to share a piece of the pie at dad's death. You know, it's not all going to a spouse. Some is going to the kids. Some is going to a spouse. So that's one thought and one way to handle that. So when we're thinking about what amount should be given to the kids, there's kind of two different options. First is a dollar amount gift, and the second is a percentage amount gift. A dollar amount gift is a problem if the estate goes down dramatically. It kind of depends upon what your priorities are, but let's say you give $200,000 and then all of a sudden the estate plummets. What that means is that all of a sudden the wife's share is going to be shrinking, right? Because the children are going to get a higher and higher percentage of the estate if they're getting a dollar amount gift and the estate went down. Now, if they get a percentage of the estate and the estate goes down, then the kid share is going to be made smaller and smaller. So sometimes when people are thinking about this dollar gift, you can create like a ceiling or floor concept. So a ceiling would look something like this. My kids are going to get 10% of my estate, but no more than $200,000. So that means they get 200,000 or less, whatever is greater. So that's creating a ceiling, but it also floats with a percentage. Creating a floor would sound like this. My kids get a minimum of 200,000 or 10% of my estate, whatever is greater. Okay. So if 10% is greater than 200,000, then they would get that greater number. So these concepts of combining numbers and percentages can help with the uncertainty of not knowing how assets are going to be spent down at the time, if you're going to be higher net worth at that time or lower net worth at the time. So thank you so much for your attention, and stay tuned for more techniques with blended families as I discuss in part 2, where I discuss strategies about how to give assets to a spouse. Thank you.